Hi, everyone. My name is Megan Reitz, and I am an owner and the psychotherapist at Megan L. Reitz and Associates here in Schaumburg. I run a practice both in Schaumburg and then actually have a satellite office in Lincoln Park in Chicago. We have three other therapists, and I've been asked today to do a presentation on transitions and change for adjusting back to school after COVID, uh, parentheses during, since we're not quite past that, and wanted to provide both support and information, including tips on how to cope with the transition into the school year during these challenging times. Just to give you a little bit of background information about me, I'm a licensed clinical professional counselor and a national certified counselor. I have been in practice for 18 years, and I've been doing the private practice thing for about 11. We at my practice work with kids ages 5 and up. Work closely with the District 54 and other school districts in the area, working with kids with emotional and behavioral issues. And then we also work on up through adolescents and adults with couples and families. I will be giving you guys some contact information should you want to reach out to us or find more about our practice. And but I'll save that for the end. First, before we jump into everything, I just want to say thank you so much for taking the time to watch and listen to this. I know it can be kind of challenging not being in person, but hopefully because you can, rewatch it, rewind, forward, fast forward. That'll help with retaining the information. So we'll go ahead and jump in. For this first slide, you can see that that's a cat. That is one of my cats. Her name is Momo. She was helping me during a day of doing telehealth. This was in between sessions. So just wanted to start us off with a calm and fun tone. So first things first, and I know you guys aren't here present to actually answer this question, but want you to think about what have your challenges been? What have they been at the start of the pandemic, from quarantine to up to today, as we're navigating these really not only challenging times but just different times. So I want you to kind of be thinking about those things. And one thing I like to put out there is that I think it's important for us to identify what we're struggling with. So if it's parenting skills, if your kids are having a hard time, and how to cope. Is really difficult. And you guys have probably heard the adage lately. It's kind of all over social media. It's okay not to be okay. And that is one thing I really want to impress upon you, is that you don't have to have it all figured out. There's no guidebook to life, and there's certainly no guidebook to dealing with a pandemic. So having a little bit of compassion and grace can really go a long way. So let's move into our next slide. So we're going to talk about change, why it's obviously difficult, and then what are the positives and negatives that can come out of that. Before we do that, I wanted to start off with something where just to set a little bit of intention into this presentation today. So what I'm going to have you do at home or wherever you are at watching this, is we're going to do something called PEM, and that's positive emotional memory. And what that really is to really bring up something that you really have a great memory of. And I'm going to take that one step further, and I want you to think about a positive memory that you have with spending time with your child or children. And I want you to just take a moment to see if you can pull something up. And it could be something very small and minor, just like, hey, I had a really good interaction at dinner with my child. or something bigger, like, hey, we went on this great vacation and I had such an awesome time, doing some kind of an activity together. So once you have that in your mind, what I want you to do is kind of give yourself a bear hug. So you're going to go like this, and you want to put your hands right here on your upper arms. And what I want you to do is go ahead and close your eyes. And as you do that, thinking about that positive memory, I want you to tap on your arms, just alternating like this. And as you're doing that, I'm just going to encourage you to keep your brain focusing back on that memory, really thinking it out, noting it. What was it that you remember? Sights, sounds, colors, smells, feelings. And if your brain wanders off, that is okay. Just bring it right on back. No judgment. And keep tapping each side of your arm while doing this. And I'm doing this with you so you can watch on the video as well. So we'll give that another few seconds, thinking about that memory and just really immersing yourself in it while you do this. Okay, we'll go ahead and stop for now. And what I did is wanting to really help you start off this presentation with some positivity with and towards your partners, your children, family members, friends, coworkers, etc. But especially with your kids, because I know we're going to be getting into the meat of this, which is going to contain, the struggles that that you guys are having. So I wanted to start off on a positive note. Not all things are bad. And that is actually, if anyone's curious, that that technique or tool comes from something called EMDR, and it's used for trauma, but it really can be used across the board in my experience. So please use that, in other instances if you feel like that might be helpful for you. All right, so let's jump into change. I don't know that too many of us really, really love change. I think most of us as humans like to have routine and schedules and really just to know what's going to happen. Having a plan of action, it really can be very stabilizing and calming. So clearly change can be difficult, particularly for our little ones. They are still in their, like, the heart of brain development, and trying to navigate differences and changes. And, especially too, let's throw a pandemic in it. It's going to really require a lot of assistance and support from you as parents, and then also too how you take care of yourselves as well, because I know that us as adults also struggle with this. So let's talk about the positives and the negatives. So what's good about change? And I was just kind of jotting down some notes as I was thinking about this one. And, a couple of things came to mind. So what's good about change? Progress forward, and different can be better. So, when I have a client comes in, and I use this statement a lot, is, banging your head against a wall and expecting something different than a headache, right? So you got to do something different in order to get to, like, a goal or something that you're wanting to achieve. The negatives, it requires adjustments and patience, and can honestly increase stress, even if it's going to be good stress. So you can understand why we as humans probably like to dig our heels in a little bit and not change. If it was so easy, I probably wouldn't have a job as a therapist. But that's why you're here today, so that we can talk about some ideas and thoughts and tips of how to help support your kids the best to your ability, so that they can be successful in the school year. All right. Okay. So let's talk about new normals. So just some questions, food for thought, if you will. Again, I know we're not in person. I'd be posing these questions to you in real time, but just give it some space and time when you have a chance. What has your experience been since March of 2020? Can you believe it? It's been over a year and a half, and we've been really in the muck and mire of this? How are you coping with the potential COVID uptick that we're dealing with the Delta variant and all of that? That certainly is posing some of its own challenges and hurdles. And then, of course, the masks, the social distancing, and vaccinations. There's a lot of high emotions around some of this stuff. And I know that has actually brought on a lot of anxiety and frustration, and really caused some rifts in families and friends who'd be very divisive. So kind of putting those questions on the back burner, let's talk about what are some of the things that people are generally dealing with. And this is children on up. Grief and loss. Grief and loss over our normal, right? So, we aren't just able to kind of go about our days the way that we used to. And there's definitely a grieving process with that, like thinking about times where you never have to think about a mask or having to socially distance. I mean, thinking about even something as simple as hugs. And when you remove those, man, that is really, really difficult for humans who are hardwired for connection. Acceptance. Again, change is hard. So I think a lot of times we want to do what we can to avoid it. And so that's why a level of acceptance of where we're at, because we just don't really have a ton of control. You do the best that you can do to take care of you, your family, etc. And so at the end of the day, there does have to be a level of acceptance that's obtained to kind of cope and move forward. Flexibility, again, this is really difficult for people. I think a lot of us can work from a very rigid place. And so anything that flies in the face of how we live our lives normally and typically can really cause an uptick in stress, anxiety, depression, etc. However, with the level of flexibility that's needing to be required right now and we'll talk a little bit more about this on how to attain it, but there does need to be a presence of that in some form. Distress tolerance. This is a biggie. So essentially what it means is being able to tolerate distress. So if you are in a bit of a higher emotional state, what are some ways that you do to help regulate your emotions, calm down? Locus of control, kind of alluded to this with the acceptance and flexibility, but essentially, what are you in control of? At the end of the day, us as a person or persons, we are in charge of ourselves. So I am responsible for my feelings, thoughts, actions, and reactions. I can't control what other people do. I sure could try to influence it, but really, I mean, people have their own free will. So that's something too, in that level of acceptance, is knowing what you can, knowing what you do is the best of your ability, and then the rest is left to up to other people. But I know that's really hard to relinquish that control. And then lastly, of course, mental health support. So in my area of work, we have definitely seen a huge increase in the need for therapy services. During COVID, and even up to now, there's been a lot more isolation. So depression has increased. And then, we talk about life continues to happen. So people have lost jobs. There's been breakups, divorces, even like the good stuff like marriages and having babies and, doing all of that stuff has been affected in such a way that is so outside of our usual that a lot of people are experiencing things on a mental health level that they've never had before, or if they already had some mental health struggles, they are amplified. So that's another area too, is asking yourself, do I have the coping skills to be dealing with the stuff that's coming my way, or do I need a little bit of extra help? So again, with mental health support, it doesn't have to be therapy necessarily. It can be tapping into what are your support systems? What are the things that bring you joy? What do you do in terms of making sure you're drawing boundaries with work and personal time? So all of those things fall under that category. All right, next slide. Okay, so I'm going to be sharing a few things from Mental Health America. They're a great resource, and I highly recommend checking them out. So for this is for students, feeling safe is important. After meeting basic needs for survival like food, water, and sleep, feeling safe and secure is necessary before anyone can focus on relationships, learning, or other opportunities for personal success. So what I'm getting at here, and what they're also trying to strive to communicate, is that we want to make sure our basic needs are met, right? And especially with kids, they're in a developmental stage where they do need guidance. They need a large level of support, and also too making sure that once their basic needs are met, like food, water, sleep, shelter, clothes, all of that stuff, that is a core of feeling safe and secure. And so if children have that, that makes them a lot more able to deal with some of the higher end kinds of changes and potential stressors that might come along. So that's just something to keep in the back of your head, because if those things aren't being met, then the other stuff that we expect from them, like achieving in school, etc., is not going to really be something that can be achieved successfully. So food for thought. All right. Our next slide. Again, this stuff is coming from Mental Health America. Love this resource. It's really accessible. These have been taken from Instagram, and I'll be sharing more of their contact information at the end of our presentation. So why safety matters. Going back to school may come with some nerves this year, especially since the last 2 school years haven't been normal. So when you really think about that, it has impacted 2019-2020 school year, and then 2020 and 2021. So that is a pretty long period of time. So for a lot of people, including myself, getting back into the swing of things and in person can be really kind of weird, scary, and stressful. So going back to what I said in the last slide, is it's important to feel safe in school. If you are worried or afraid, it's hard to think about anything else. I think that we can all relate to that. And when you feel safe, you're able to explore and try new things, which honestly is like the building blocks for making learning possible. And something to also consider is that we spend a lot of or most of our time either at work or school, and that really does need to be a safe space. Okay, home environment. So it's, again, this is kind of a common sense thing, but I think it's worth throwing out there, is that our home environment is very important in terms of setting the tone for success in school. So couple of things with this slide. The start of a new school year can be really exciting but uncertain for a whole family. Just because the kids are going back to school doesn't mean they're the only ones dealing with change. It's a big thing too for parents, shifting from summertime stuff to fall, and then adding in there what are the things that are going on with school in terms of masks, social distancing, all of the COVID stuff too. So a couple of statistics. So something that they pulled, Mental Health America's pulled, was 82% of 11 to 17-year-olds who took a screen from their website from March 2020 to July 2021 were showing signs of a mental health condition. So that's pretty significant. And like I said earlier, is that there's definitely a rise of these things coming up. If you are concerned about your child or teen and their ability to be in person and also to be successful this year, there are things that you can do to help them transition. So like there's just kind of reiterating, let's make that home environment very, like being very conscious about setting that up to help provide that safety measure in that area. All right, next slide. How students are affected. Even if your child or teen seems to be doing well, they were impacted in some way by the events of the last year and a half. All school-age youth experience some degree of uncertainty and fear, loss of normalcy or disruption of routine, reduced peer interaction or loneliness. Social interactions really took a hard hit. Lack of structure, and grief and loss. So this is probably one of the more helpful slides. How can you help? So, one, reevaluate your expectations and anticipate challenges. All right. So, I think that that's the thing too is what are realistic expectations versus having ones that are so high that is it even possible to achieve? And those are things that have to really be revisited every so often, depending on what's going on. So, children and teens may act differently in school than they have before because of all of these adjustments from virtual learning. You need to anticipate some disorganization, forgetfulness, and anxiety. There might be also higher levels of irritability and frustration than what you have been used to. So, the two keywords are going to be patience and compassion. Work as a team with the school. So important. I would say this is important regardless of COVID or not. Teachers and parents or caregivers should work together. This is especially important because how things have been in the virtual sphere, moving into in person at school, is going to be even more challenging than it has been in years past. So having open communication, working with the teacher, social worker, psychologist, all of those people at school that are your people to touch base with, it's going to be very important to have that. Be familiar with options for supports through your school, so that if they are struggling emotionally, behaviorally, academically, you can be their best advocate. And then third, encourage communication and emotional vulnerability. Trust is so important. Your child needs to know that they can come to you and that you'll listen when they do need to come to you. Be curious and ask questions about their day, what they learned, how they felt, especially since teens usually aren't the most forthcoming. For those who are dealing with a lot of fear and anxiety, they may need frequent comforting and reassurance to feel safe, and that is okay. Again, more on the how can you help or how you can help portion. Take care of your own mental health. I can't stress this enough that if you don't take care of yourself, how can you possibly take care of a loved one? So, children and teens pick up on anxiety and tension in adults around them. So, being open about your own feelings and leading by example, role modeling, and how you deal with them is going to be very important. So, model healthy behaviors and coping skills. And last, know when your child struggles may be a sign of something bigger. So, all of those things that we've led up to that I've just mentioned through these couple of slides is when you do assess where things are at, I want you to kind of take a step back and say, like, okay, I'm doing all the things that have been suggested here, but things seem to be still really rough for my kid. So, common signs of mental health conditions in youth include concentration and memory issues, changes in appetite, feeling sad or hopeless, loss of interest in things they used to find interest in, excessive worry, irritability, changes in sleep patterns, and or angry outbursts. So just the last part of this is that there is a parent screen on the Mental Health America website. And I would highly recommend if you are feeling even just a little bit kind of curious about where your child is falling along the continuum, I'd say hop on there and kind of see what it comes out, what your results come out as. Okay, parenting. So this slide I took a screenshot, so I'm sorry if it's a little fuzzy, a screenshot of parenting dues. And I liked it because I felt like it really encompassed some of the basic things that we need to be doing on our everyday lives with our family and children, but also too all the more important as of now. So how to support your child, how to take care of yourself, and how to attend to your relationship with your child. So all of these kind of encompass that. So the first one is I'm sorry about that. I have to move my little light. Talk to them about non-school related subjects. I know that often the blanket question is, how was school today? They're probably going to answer fine, and may just not give you a whole lot of information. So it's important to be asking them about other things other than just school. Let them teach you about their interests. So they come home, they have something that they're like feeling really good about. Maybe they did a project at school or something like that. And maybe it's not something that you're really digging, or that you're kind of in a space where you're like, I would encourage you to kind of like override that and allow them to tell you more about that. If it's some kind of a skill or something that they've learned, that'd be great if you could say, hey, why don't you teach me that? That will let them know that you are interested in what they are doing at school. Remember things about their lives, share about your own life. So again, that goes into that area of just connecting and having that dialogue so that you really know each other. Engage in activities with them. I think that's so very important. So, if it's, I'm going to get on the ground and I'm going to play, I'm going to play Barbies with my kid. I'm going to do some imaginary play. Those kinds of things, which are pretty basic examples, but are really important. Tell hilarious and even embarrassing stories. Levity, humor, those kinds of things are so very important. And it also gives your child a perspective of you having other parts of you that I think that just kind of helps them connect further. Share inspirational stories from your life. Do crazy things. Be silly. That's great. And use their interests in your lessons for them. And apologize when you mess up. We are not perfect. And I think it's so important for parents to acknowledge when maybe there has been something that didn't go to plan or was like their responsibility and there was some fault. So just as we would ask other people in our lives and our kids to take responsibility, we do the same. Okay, strategies for success. So a few things just to throw out there to you. Confidence, you've got this. So I know it may feel like inside you don't got this, or I don't want this. But I think that it's very important that if you are working on yourself, you are going to feel a lot more confident in your abilities as a parent or caregiver. And that really shows, again, a level of promoting trust and safety to your child. Support systems are necessary. I can't stress this enough. And I'm not saying go out there and you need to have like a gaggle of a ton of friends. Because it's not really about that. It's more about, okay, what are the things that you can access if you're feeling stressed, upset, struggling, whatever that might be, or sharing in good times as well. What are those things? So support systems can include things like getting involved in your village or parks system. Like Schaumburg, I know, has a lot of things that they do through their park district. So community centers, that kind of thing, church, synagogue, temple. Also, too, just like getting involved. There's stuff on meetup.com is a great way to also connect with people with similar interests. And then also, too, thinking about like, maybe it would be kind of, promoting some self improvement by taking a class over at Harper, or like at a community college level kind of a thing. So just thinking a little outside of the box, if you find that, I really probably need to get out there and have some connection with other folks. Communicate. So while this is something that seems like it would be pretty straightforward and understood, is that if you take a moment to step back, how do you do with your communication? Are you effective? How is your communication with your partner, with your children's other parent, other people in your world in general? So if you're working on your communication style, that's going to be role modeling for your kid. Self-care is very, very important. I know that gets thrown around a lot these days. And as cliched as it is, and I know it sounds like Okay, yeah, I've heard this before. It really truly is important. And those things can really be as something as simple as I'm going to carve out 5 minutes before the kids get up for school so that I can have my coffee and just be. It doesn't have to be some kind of a grand gesture. Patience and flexibility, we've already talked about. Routine, routine, routine. Okay, so we are getting back into the swing of things with the school year. Yes, there are lots of changes. Yes, there may be more changes to come. And I know we have to roll with that. However, they are getting back into the school year. So, as much as possible, putting in place, which, side note, I'd be telling this to you whether or not there was COVID, same wake time and bedtime, um, even if you can try to do that on weekends. Being consistent with discipline, being consistent with praise, making sure that, we're getting food in and, doing all of these things on a place where it's like, okay, your child knows what to expect and when. That can really, really assist with any already existing anxiety. Listen, a lot of times we just don't do that very well as adults to our kids. So when your child comes to you with something, instead of negating it or saying like I don't have time for this, those kinds of things, or just kind of like ignoring, it's really important for you to use some active listening skills with them. They need to feel heard, and also too that you are interested in them. And so that leads into being able to connect. Okay, techniques to make transitions easier from the Child Mind Institute. I love the Child Mind Institute. Again, I will have more information on that at the end of the presentation, but I highly recommend taking a look at that. You can also sign up for their e-newsletter. They have a plethora of great information. So I'll just flip through these slides relatively quickly because you can read them through in more detail on your own. But preview and countdown. So every morning, lay out what the day will look like. So that goes back to what to expect, routine. So I think that that's really important, especially with little ones. The next one, visual cues. Again, for little ones, posting a chart with pictures illustrating what to expect from a particular transition or the steps involved. So what I do, which is kind of my own way, is I do kind of like some storyboards. And I find that it's helpful, especially if, the younger ones, that helps give them a visual mental note of what is going to happen. So, okay, on this board, I know that, okay, it's time for bath, and then it's time for me to get ready for bed, and parent is going to read me a story, and then I go to sleep. Or in the morning, what are the little things that have to happen before we get to school? So that's something to also be thinking as a possible tool to help. Creating routines. I know that I'm really hitting that home today. But if there are transitions that your child struggles with, like going to bed, is like really making sure there's consistency and structure around that. Having the same bedtime, having the same routine to get ready for bed is just really, really more helpful. Okay, so resources. This is probably one of the more important slides that you will get from this webinar. So one, and this is going back to what I said in an earlier slide, self-care. What does that mean? And I really liked this post. Because I felt like it really did hit home too. Okay, self-care isn't about like going out and making sure that like, oh, I treated myself to a coffee from Starbucks and I went and got, a pedicure, which those are great things, but it's even more basic than that. Have you eaten today? Have you had enough water? Have you taken your medication? Have you taken a break today? Have you done something kind for yourself today? Even if it's just kind of like giving yourself a little pep talk or saying like, Great job for getting through that meeting and not falling asleep or whatever. And have you been outside today? Fresh air is really important. So if you can take a few minutes between things, I highly recommend it. I think so often, especially since we're on our computers and electronic devices so much, it really sucks us in, and we have more of a tendency to not get up as much and move around. So, a few resources that I want to just throw out there and for you guys to check out, play around with. A lot of these, actually, most of them in some form or fashion are free. So, they're really easy access. And if you don't like one, scrap it, try another. So, my first one is COVID Coach. It's actually been developed by the VA, the Veterans. Association, and I love it. I've recommended it to clients. I use it myself, and because it says COVID Coach, I know it has definitely some information and stuff about COVID. But the piece of the app I really like is really focusing on giving you tools to help relax, calm, just tips on how to deal with your mood, etc. Really, really can't stress this enough. I think it's worth taking a look at. The Anemone app, I think I said that right. This is an app, again, that is just a helpful, supportive app with dealing with stress, anxiety, depression, a wide array of emotions and stressors. And it was actually developed by a college student for her school to use, and it kind of blew up. So that's that one. Dailystrength.org. Love this website because it's essentially got like chat boards on it, and it has every topic under the sun that you can hop on under there, and you can connect with others dealing with the same stuff you are, get feedback, and you can be as anonymous as you want, and you can interact if you want to, or you don't have to. So there's a lot of good resources on there. Slumberkins, they should probably give me a kickback, but I'm going to give them a plug anyways. So Slumberkins, highly recommend them for the younger ones, although even some of my older kids that have come in the office love these. And so basically they're like stuffed animals. They call them kins, or they're in blanket form called snugglers, and they each have their own story. So stuff about stress, about calming, about change, resiliency. So I highly recommend taking a look at those because I have found that that's been very helpful in my practice. And also too, there's free resources on the website. So you don't even have to buy the animals and their books to have access to things that you can actually print off and use. Another one is A Little Spot of Feelings. So there's a book with this, but so this woman, I believe she is a therapist, Diane Alber, has created little spots that are different colors and different feelings, and they also have their own stories. I also really like, they have a part of that called I think it's called Not Just a Scribble. And so essentially it's like taking something where if you give your child, student, kid, whatever, some crayons or something to color with and just scribble something in about like a circle sized area. And then we slap on some eyes and a face and just kind of make it silly. And then we can talk about, what do you think that, like, is there a story behind this scribble? Is there a feeling or emotion that you would associate with it? It's just kind of a fun way to explore feelings. 123 Magic, if you've ever seen me talk for SPU before, you would know that I am a diehard 123 Magic follower. I can't stress this one enough. Dr. Phelan does frequent live webinars for 123 Magic. And they're usually via Facebook or through the website, and you can sign up for the free e-newsletter. They're free, great way to ask questions in real time, and also get feedback about certain things like, how do I get my kid to bed? How do I deal with tantrums? All of those kinds of things are addressed in a very specific and accessible way. So 123 Magic, can't say enough. And they've also got it translated into Spanish. Go Noodle, this is one, I know that teachers and schools will use this, but so basically it's a program, and I'll actually use it in sessions with kids as well. I find it's really helpful because they have like little short videos that you can depending on age appropriateness, on different things like just movement. Techniques to help breathe or calm. So there's educational pieces on there, and then also to emotional behavioral supports. Again, great one, and I've used it and it's free. Plant Love Grow and Child Mind Institute. Plant Love Grow is one of my main sources of getting a lot of activities and worksheets for the students that I work with. Free, love it. Again, go check it out. And Child Mind Institute, we've already really talked about that. But again, a lot of the slides that I had shared with you guys is from there, and they have just so much, just such rich resources. I can't stress that enough, that they really cover a ton of topics, including like ADHD. So I would highly recommend taking a look at that. Okay, so normally, because I know we're probably winding down for time here. So normally, give me just a second. Technology. I want to make sure you guys can see me. Okay. All right. Thanks for bearing with me. All right. So questions. So this would be normally the time I would say like, hey, what are your guys' questions? Like specific instances, etc. Obviously, this is not in real time. So I'm going to do the next best thing, and I'm going to pose questions I would imagine would be asked. So with that being said, what I don't get to or answer, or if you have any further thoughts, feelings, or questions, I'll be giving you my information here at the end so that you can contact me. So no worries, because I know that I can't cover everything. So first, how do I cope with my stress? That is like the $1,000,000 question I think all of us have, and that's going to actually look different for each person, because it really does depend on what kind of stressors you yourself are encountering, because they may be very different from another person. And I think you also need to know what works for you. So what works for one person may not work for another. So I think that sitting down and kind of like saying to yourself, okay, what are the stressors I'm dealing with? Let me just jot them down. Then you can take inventory of, okay, are these things that, where do they land on the priority list? What are things that need to be dealt with right now versus in the future? Are there some problem solving things that I can do around these to organize it? That in itself is helping cope with stress. Then I would also suggest, even though this presentation is geared towards school age students, is for yourself, you can also glean a lot of information from the resources I've shared. How do I co-parent with my spouse, partner, and or child's other parent? This is a huge question that I get asked all the time. And that's honestly a big piece of why parents will come into therapy for their kids. That is probably another presentation in its own right. But going back to effective communication is so very important. Also, tabling your stuff with that person and really keeping in mind what is like a topic of conversation. If you're talking about your child, that needs to be the focal point, and really being mindful of what I like to throw these out to my couples, the 4 horsemen from the Gottman Institute. And one of them is defensiveness. Coming off defensive, not only does that, if your kids are around, role model poor behavior, but that really is going to break down the communication that you have with that other person. So it's so important for you to be using your listening skills, be willing to hear other people's opinions, and try to understand, even if you don't agree. What do I do if I'm doing all these things you suggested and my child is still struggling? So through the Mental Health America slide, I know that I had mentioned that parent screening. I think it's worth, checking that out. That's one thing. Another one is talking to your student's teacher, their social worker. So just getting a sense of what's going on at school. And then also too, something that often gets overlooked or doesn't be given a lot of weight is just what's going on with them from a medical or physical end. I highly recommend anytime that someone comes to see me that they have a recent physical. We like to rule out any medical or physical issues before we kind of go down the path of mental health therapy. That just helps us know what we're dealing with, because sometimes we might be surprised and say, oh, okay, there's something else going on here, and that's why we're having, an uptick in anxiety. There's no shame in asking for help. I really am hopeful that the stigma around getting mental health help is lifting, and eventually be gone. I know we're making major strides, but I know we've got a ways to go. Please don't hesitate to reach out for help. When should I seek extra help or support for my child? If it's being recommended by the school, the pediatrician, or if you just kind of have a gut feeling, it can't hurt to reach out to a therapist and see, hey, should we make an appointment, or should myself or my significant other or the other child's parent, should we come in and maybe just kind of talk through like our concerns and where do we need to go with that? So that's another option. Okay. How do I get in touch with you? How do I get copies of your slides and resources? Great question. So on the screen, you're going to see my email address, megan@schaumburgcounselor.com. Please feel free to shoot me an email. I will be happy to send you a copy of my slides. And if there are any other resources you're seeking, I'll try to help you out. Just so that you have this information, we are located over there by Woodfield Mall, right behind Olive Garden. So we're at 1101 Perimeter Drive. Our phone number is on the screen. And then our website, which is full of a lot of information, is schaumburgcounselor.com. So I highly recommend checking that out too if you want to get some more information, not only about our practice, but our blog articles as well. So, okay, our next slide, and we're almost going to wrap up here. All right, so if you would just take a moment to take a look at the slide and just notice that there's a graphic with a hand. And so this is a good one I use with, actually all my people, but is great with my younger kids. I know like my 5 to 10-year-olds, this helps visualize what's going on with the brain. So if you take your hand and your brain this is what, kind of looks like. Okay. So tuck in your thumb and make a fist. And you'll see that this part right here is the prefrontal cortex. So that's that higher level of thinking. And the thumb is the amygdala, the reptilian brain, brainstem, that part where it's like fight, flight, or freeze response. So when you feel a big emotion, you flip your lid, and that means the amygdala is in charge. If I take deep breaths, my amygdala calms down, and then your prefrontal cortex is in charge. So I like to just use this visualization. I might kind of like take the vocabulary down a notch than using some of these words, but that's very helpful for kids to understand what is it that I'm telling you to do versus showing you and actually having something that they're connected to with their body. All right, so we're going to be wrapping up. And I just want to say thank you so much for hanging in there. I know sometimes with webinars, it's so easy to get distracted. And I'm really hopeful that you are able to get something good out of this. And I know that also, too, it's just been such a pleasure to be able to share this information. And honestly, I probably could talk for hours about it. So this probably just touches the tip of the iceberg. But what I want to leave you guys with before I share this quote is do the best you can. There is no perfect. So I always say progress over perfection and ask for help. Okay. So with that, I want to just put out there any change, even a change for the better, is always accompanied by discomforts. And that's from Arnold Bennett. So with that, I say thank you so much for watching today, and good luck with the school year. Thank you.